I always tell people that you're more capable than you think you are.
Be original. Don't be like the guy on the radio. Great music will prevail. So I would tell people, make great music. Don't make other people's music. Make your own.
Money don't make me, so I just say, you know what? I just gotta be happy in my life. Build your team. Look around you. Figure out all these parts, because you can't do it all yourself. You're gonna burn out and get tired.
Never burn any bridges. You never know who someone's gonna be.
I must not fear. Fear is the mind killer.
Welcome to the Indie Playbook presented by Focus Noise, ad-free until we sell out. Once again, I'm your host, Eric Abel, bringing you some incredible stories and insight from some of the brightest minds in the entertainment world. And today's guest is no exception at all. Justin Hunte, the former editor-in-chief at HipHopDX. He's currently with Ambrosia For Heads and Empire Distribution, and he's an incredible asset to the hip-hop community. And he's also a weekly contributor to Shade 45's All Out show. And as you can see, Justin is super passionate. He sacrificed a lot to be able to build this career, which is now full of accomplishments, and he's still growing. And that's one thing that I really think you'll get from this interview is that growth mindset and his ability to see his vision and go after it. And if nothing else, I want you to take that away from this because it's a very strong message. And I think you'll really feel this conversation. And if you've been enjoying the episode so far, go check out more at focusnoise.com. Tell a friend, that's the absolute best thing you could do. And subscribe on the podcast app. And without further ado, here's my man, Justin Hunte. When I first met you, you were out in Brooklyn, right? At Brooklyn Bodega.
Brooklyn Bodega.
It's like 6 or 7 years ago.
Yeah. I was at Bodega from 2010 through 2012, like the beginning of 2012.
Yeah. So I mean, for me, it's been dope to watch your trajectory since then because, you see so many people come in and out of this industry, and you don't necessarily know who's going to stick at the time. But I've always saw that you had that work ethic and you had a vision, and you've always been cutting edge and ahead of the curve, and it's just been great to watch. So for me, it's a pleasure to have you on.
Word up, I appreciate that, man.
Yeah. So let's go back before Brooklyn Bodega a little bit. How did you get into this industry? What got you into it?
It was a bit. It's funny. I never had a goal of going into journalism or going into media. So I worked in investment banking for Bank of America Merrill Lynch, and I was doing that for 6 years. So from 2003 through 2009, and I was a finance major in college, and Lupe Fiasco came out in, I guess I want to say 2004 or 5 maybe, was when I ran into his mixtapes. And he was just on another level of rapping to the point where I would be at work emailing my friends about how dope Lupe was. Mm-hmm. Because around that time, the music industry was consolidating heavily. So a lot of the things that we saw on television and radio was just a lot less diverse. And so all my friends and I were just kind of like, yo, what's happening in rap? We were kind of disenfranchised with what was happening in the industry. So Lupe was the antithesis of all that. And so I would email on my friends. And I just fell in love with the act and art of contextualizing music and culture. And a friend of mine set up a blog for me based off of my emails. And I did that for like 2 years.
Is that the company man?
That's where the name came from.
Okay.
Because I felt like a company man.
Right.
Like I'm at work slaving away for someone else's tax break. And it was like that scene from Next Friday where Craig and Day Day are in the studio or in the record store, and they were smoking weed, and Pinky was on his way back, and Day-Day was like, oh, we got to clean up. Pinky's on his way back.
Right.
And then Craig's like, company man, you fucking company man.
Yeah.
And I was like, yo, that's how I felt. And this was also when all the bloggers had aliases. You didn't know who was really writing for a lot of these places. And so I felt like I needed an alias also because I didn't want to get fired. Like I'm spending hours during the day writing about rap music.
But in all fairness, do you think they'd be scouring through the blogs to see if they could find your name?
I don't know.
Yeah,
I mean, you know, who knows? I mean, probably not. But then also I was really concerned about accidental dream killers. Like, you know, I didn't want people to know that I was writing about rap at a time when I didn't know how good I was. You know what I mean? Like I didn't know whether or not I was good or bad. I just knew I liked it.
Right.
And so it was multifaceted to come up with a different name. So by the time 2008 rolled around, I started benchmarking the stuff I was writing versus the stuff I was reading. And I got to the point where the stuff I was writing wasn't always better than the stuff I was reading, but it wasn't always worse than the stuff I was reading. So I'm like, okay, cool, I'm competitive.
Right.
So I left the bank in 2009 with the plan to like run around New York City, interview as many rappers as possible. And if I could, if it didn't work out after 5 years, then I would just go to journalism school.
Right. So the goal at the beginning was to be a writer. It wasn't necessarily to be on camera or anything.
That was never a goal.
Okay.
Never a goal.
Right.
I just wanted to write the greatest album review of all time, and then I wanted to be the greatest rap writer of all time.
Right.
That was it.
And you knew at the point that you're going to take at least a significant pay cut to go into this world, right?
Yeah. I mean, I watched this Dave Chappelle Inside the Actor's Studio, and he was talking about how when he was a kid, he knew that he wanted to go into comedy. And his dad didn't believe in it. So he was like, well, his dad was like, yo, you're not going to make any money in comedy. And he was like, well, Dad, how much do you make as a teacher? And his dad was like, about $40,000 a year. And Dave was like, if I could make $40,000 a year doing comedy, I'd be happy.
Right.
And so his dad said, well, go ahead and do it, Dave. And so that's how he started. So that was my mindset.
Yeah. What's good is Dad wasn't a billionaire or something. Right. Would have been different expectations.
You know, when I told my parents I was going to leave to write about rap, my dad thought I was crazy.
Yeah.
He did. Like, my mom was all for it. My mom was like, yeah, if that's what you want to do. My dad was like, yo, you got a chance to be a millionaire, like, really young.
Right.
Why would you leave to go do this? And I was like, well, here's my plan. And so I told my dad my plan. He was like, well, yeah, go ahead and do it.
Right.
So,
because I'm sure at that point he could tell it was well thought out. You don't seem like the person who just jumps into something without thinking about it.
Exactly.
Right.
Right.
So you obviously you have to wear a lot of hats in this industry, and a lot of people do to kind of survive. That's how we do this, like multiple streams of income. So imagine you're in a green room that's loud and crowded, and you have to explain to an artist or a manager really quickly what you do.
I write about rap music.
That's it.
That's it.
Simple.
It is, because people look at that as limiting. To me, it's the most encompassing thing there is. Rap music or hip-hop is the music of a generation. People know rap, even if they hate it. Everybody knows the theme song to The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air.
That's real.
That's probably the most famous rap ever. It's like video games. You may hate video games, but you know Mario.
Right.
You know Tetris. You know, and so hip-hop and rap music and the culture around it has now evolved into television, is involved into politics.
Right.
There isn't a sector of life where it doesn't coincide.
Yeah.
And so for me, there's nothing iller than being like the greatest rap writer of all time. Like, to me, that goal doesn't have a ceiling.
Yeah.
And so that's my approach to everything that happens in this industry. Like, I have a finance background. I've worked in money longer. Well, I guess at this point it's probably about even. But for most of my career, I worked in money longer than I worked in music.
Right.
All you hear about in the music is money.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of money to fund all these ideas.
Yeah.
So, and there isn't a conversation that you can't have where there isn't a rap lyric that relates to it. You know, so for me, that's like huge in terms of scope.
Right.
As opposed to just like what normally people tell me, why not just the best writer? Well, what's the difference?
Right.
You can, I turned on, I can't think of his name, Ari Melbourne, I think now. He's on MSNBC. Okay. He's one of their new commentators.
Right.
At least once an episode, he relates something happening in politics to a rap lyric.
Right. I like that about Michael Eric Dyson too. I feel like he has a line for everything.
He does.
Yeah.
You know, and truthfully, my favorite journalists always find a way to link whatever they're talking about to other things that are broader or have a broader connection to culture.
Yeah, that's true. It kind of, so going back to being a rap writer or a hip hop writer, the only other person I've had on this show, I guess, in your category would be Soren Baker.
Oh yeah,
And
big shout
so,
out to Soren.
yeah, so Soren, good guy. So Soren had, you know, I would talk to him about how he made that transition from being a writer to being on camera. And he talked about, you know, he said Ice Cube and Exhibit are friends of mine, and obviously they're successful. So I asked them, like, you're successful, you know, you make money. What should I be doing to make money? And that's when they said you have to be the face. You can't just like be behind the scenes working for someone else. And that's what made him create his own network.
Right.
Was it similar for you? I mean, I know you were running HipHopDX.
Right.
And,
Soren was actually my first hire as
Okay.
Editor-in-Chief of DX.
good hire.
Yeah.
Good dude.
Worked out.
Yeah. So, but you created a lot of the content that they're still even doing over there.
Correct. Yeah.
And so what gave you the idea to become more of an on-air
That actually
personality?
happened at Bodega. So
Okay.
that was happenstance, completely happenstance. So within my first 6 months at Brooklyn Bodega, they had a show called Brooklyn Bodega Radio, which was on PNC Radio at the time. It was an online radio network. Combat Jack was on that network. Two Dope Boys were on that network.
Yeah, the show we started with Don't Mind Blap was supposed
Blap
to
was-
be on that network. It was for like a couple weeks,
Right.
and then we moved.
Exactly.
But yeah, no, it was a great atmosphere over there.
It
Right on
was.
the water, it was cool. I
A
liked it,
$1 trillion
yeah.
view, man.
Yeah,
You had
it's
3
amazing.
bridges.
Yeah, it's
They had a
dope.
balcony on the East River.
Yeah, it's
you know.
incredible.
And so within the first 5 months, now Brooklyn Bodega's core competency is the Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival.
Right.
And the show was hosted by Wes Jackson, who's the founder, CEO, and president of Brooklyn Bodega. Now, when festival season starts, it's so demanding that Wes wasn't able to host the show every week. And so one week we had a meeting. Now, at this point, I'm just writing on the website. I think maybe 3 weeks into them allowing me to be editor-in-chief of Brooklyn Bodega. And they needed someone to host the radio show. Big shout out to John Heredia. John Heredia was like, well, Justin can do it.
Right.
I didn't even ask. I'm just on the call.
Right.
And John's like, Justin can do it.
And you hadn't had a conversation.
Never
about
had a conversation about it. So I was like, okay, yeah. So the next Friday, this is the 2010 Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival. De La Soul was headlining the festival. And they asked me to host the show. So I put together a 3-hour episode that digs into the history of De La Soul. And I'm in this studio
Right.
by myself,
Yeah.
shook. You know, like I
It's
had
hard to do a 3-hour show by yourself.
It's hard to do anything by yourself if you've never done it before.
Right.
You know,
Had you done any radio at all?
Never.
Like college? Nothing like
Nothing.
that? Okay.
not at all.
Right.
So, but I thought it'd be a cool opportunity to just talk about De La. So I wrote out, all these notes and things I wanted to talk about, and I put different songs around each album and talked about where they were at that point in time and played some songs in between. And after that, for the rest of that festival season, they kept letting me do the show, obviously because Wes didn't have a chance to do it. Now, the progress of that show grew exponentially over those next 2 months as we led up to the festival. And so after the festival that year, they let me keep doing it.
Right.
And so that's when I got to really experiment, because each of the episodes leading up to the festival was focused on an artist that was performing at the festival. Well, once the festival's over, it's like, okay, what are we going to do with this space now?
Right.
And so Run P, big shout out to Run P, he was working with the festival at that time, but he was also a DJ. He's one of my best friends now. And he was like, you know what you should do on the show? You need to do more, have more new artists. You need to play more music from new artists. So we created inbox sessions where we had different artists who would just submit music to the inbox, and we played on the show. And then after that, we were like, okay, well, we can probably bring some of these new artists on the show pretty easily.
Right.
And so then we started doing more interview-based stuff on the show. And in those early inbox sessions, Azad Wright, are you familiar with Azad Wright?
No.
You know the group They with Warner Brothers?
I've heard the name.
He's their manager.
Okay.
He submitted some joints in there. That's how he
Of
and
his
I.
own music.
Yeah, that's how he and I met. ASAP Mob, ASAP Rocky, all those guys were super nascent. We were playing their music on the show way back then. And that's actually the first time I did anything more forward-facing. Now, that stuff was all radio. But that also, because I was doing radio now I was getting invitations to host concerts, listening events, etc. And so for that year, I was doing radio, and then I was host events in New York City. Maybe I get $20, maybe I get $40, but that's your
couple drink tickets.
You know what I mean?
I know how it is.
But that's your internet bill,
right?
You
right.
know, I'm like, yo, I do that like once a month, and I'm covering I'm contributing to my overhead.
Right.
And the next year in 2011, we started doing more video. We got one of our interns, Javier Martinez, had a camera. He was a student. And so then I started doing more video interviews from that point forward.
Huh. So was Wes the person who kind of gave you your first look in the industry?
Yes. Wes and Jake Payne, almost at the same time.
Right.
So after I left the bank in June 2009, and I would give myself my own beat, right? So here I am, a new writer. I need to find artists to talk to. So I would talk to any rapper, like rappers on my block. You know what I mean? Rappers nobody's ever heard of. Big shout out to Johnny Voltic and Sun Toucher, right? But Brooklyn Bodega also, as part of their organized events, they put on an event called Show and Prove. So Show and Prove was their new artist showcase.
Right.
And so during their new artist showcase, I'd pay to get in. I'd sit in the back of this room. I'd write detailed notes, grab all the audio through my audio recorder of everybody who performed. I'd wait after the show and I'd interview them. So like Brownback All-Stars was the first winners.
Remember those guys?
You know, J57 is doing incredible stuff with DJ Premier now.
Yeah.
Concept is probably the most prolific member, and he's in Asia now. He put out a lot of stuff through Soul Spasm, but he's in Asia now extending his brand. Soulcon became one of the biggest battle rappers. You know, like these are like, you know, like Audible Doctor is producing for everybody. These are guys who are just new artists trying to get on, coming out the, you know, the Fat
I
Beats
remember
crew.
when we, Total Eclipse and I used to have a monthly out in Brooklyn, and
Word
those
up.
guys played on it.
Exactly.
Yeah, they're good guys.
Great guys.
Yeah.
You know, I met Homeboy Sandman through these events. He wasn't performing in the Show and Proves, but some other members of AOK Collective were. Eighth One was a member of that. Fresh Daily was a member of that at that time.
Right.
So I met a lot of these artists just hanging out, trying to find some way to interact with artists. I'd go to these events. I'd research them beforehand. I'd wait through the show. I'd ask great questions at the end. I'd go home and spend the next 3 hours turning that into something for my blog.
Right.
And so I did that for each of their events. At the same time, and I would cover EO Dub every Sunday night. Mm-hmm. And EO Dub was the longest, I think it still is.
That weekly, right?
Right.
The end of the week.
End of the week.
Yep.
The longest running open mic in hip hop in New York. And so I'd sit there at EO Dub covering an open mic like it was paid dues or something.
Right.
You know what I mean? And those are my first beats, and that's how I met a lot of these artists in the beginning. But in December, at the end of the year, Brooklyn Bodega had another Show and Prove. And instead of covering the artists for that Show and Prove, my plan was to cover Wes. And so I researched the hell out of Wes Jackson. And I interviewed him at the show. And my plan was to impress him so much with what I knew about him and Brooklyn Bodega that he would give me the opportunity to write for BrooklynBodega.com.
Right.
And it worked. Now, that was a Thursday.
Okay.
That Saturday, there's a huge blizzard in New York City. Huge blizzard. I'm talking like 11 inches, 12 inches. And at the time, I had just started dating the girl of my dreams, like one of my best friends who I've known for 7 years. Her and I just started dating. I'm coming off a great week. You know, I just got a gig. Didn't pay nothing, but I got another publication I can contribute to and write to. That was bigger, that also put on festivals, which will give me an opportunity to meet more artists. And there was a new artist, I don't want to call it showcase, but it's almost like, it's one of those industry events where like a label will do a casting call or whatever, and artists from across the country will pay like $100 or something like that. And they'll perform in front of a panel of industry experts. So it was all these A&Rs that was on this panel. It was for Vegas Records. Mm-hmm. And then also on that panel was Jake Payne. Editor-in-Chief of HipHopDX at the time.
Right.
DX has always been my favorite website. That morning, there's a blizzard. This Vegas Records showcase was in Newark, New Jersey. And I kept calling that morning because I did not want to get out of bed. I was already celebrating a victory. I was laying in bed with the girl of my dreams at that time. And everything about me wanted to just stay in bed. So I called over to the event, and they were like, yeah, we're still going to do it. We're just going to start a little bit late. I was like, all right. So I got out of bed. I trekked across 2 rivers into New Jersey. I took 2 trains across 2 rivers to get to Newark, New Jersey, walked 3 blocks in the snow, paid $50 to just cover the event, sat through 13 hours of the most mediocre rap talent America had to offer just so I could interview Jake Payne. My plan was the same. My plan was to impress him with my knowledge of his career, but also HipHopDX, to the point that after the conversation, he would ask me or he'd give me the opportunity to freelance for the site. And that worked.
Right.
So the next month, within the same week, now we're talking January 2010, I get my first article published on HipHopDX. It's called 50 More Like Diddy. And it was talking about how 50 Cent's career was going to start looking more like Diddy's career than Jay-Z's career because rap was going to take a backseat. And I had my first article published on BrooklynBodega.com, and it was called The Company Man Hates Lil Wayne. And it was all about how I grew up thinking Lil Wayne was like the weakest member of the Hot Boys, which he was. But at that point, he had grown to the point where I'm like, yo, I wish my favorite artists approached their career with the prolificness that Lil Wayne did. Wayne was killing all the mixtapes. He was always touching everybody's new beats, and he was putting out projects that were wide-ranging. Why wasn't Lupe Fiasco doing that at that time? Why wasn't Andre 3000 doing that at that time?
Yeah.
And so those are my first 2 pieces, and those 2 guys became, great advocates for my career.
Right. So normally I would ask a follow-up question that basically would say, what do you think the first people saw in you, meaning Jake and Wes? But I think you just proved what they saw in you. I mean, you carved out your own career. You made it happen. And that's the best advice I could give to anyone who's young out there who's trying to figure out how to get in the industry. Like, make it happen. There's so many outlets and so many ways to do things now. If you're an artist, you got to just record, you got to write. If you're a writer, you got to, write, and you got to get in front of the right people and make those connections and impress them.
You got to be prolific.
Right. And like you said, doing that research is such a big difference instead of coming to them not sure about what they do.
Yeah, exactly. And, for me, there's a great book called Steal Like an Artist by Austin Kleon. And, my goals, again, were writing based.
Right.
I want my goal is to be the greatest rap writer of all time. You're not necessarily the greatest, not the most famous journalist or anything like that, but to have a great pen.
Right.
And so Scoop Jackson, he writes a lot for ESPN. He was the first editor of The Source. How like you'll read rap articles, especially for a very long period of time in The Source or XXL, all the writers sounded like they were rapping, kind of.
Right.
Like they throw in all these rap terms and stuff.
Yeah.
Scoop Jackson created that style.
Okay.
Before him, Nelson George.
I remember him, even writing early on about the NBA and stuff, and didn't you write about sneakers and stuff?
Of course.
Yeah,
and he still does that stuff.
Yeah.
And he still carries
I
that.
I like his style. Yeah.
He created that.
Yeah.
So, all these guys that followed him later who still, even now you'll see a lot of bloggers take that approach, but he created that style. He's one of my favorite writers. Bill Simmons with, on ESPN now, The Ringer. He would write epic pieces that were like bridge culture and weird movie references and ranking all-star games, like crazy stuff. And it was all very conversational and all very first person, but also had a very distinct point of view. Yeah. And Maureen Dowd, she writes for the New York Times. She has this very scathing way of getting to the crux of whatever the issue is or the problem is with a political figure.
Right.
And so all 3 of them have very distinct styles. And so I would copy them. I bit the hell out of each one of their styles. One day I'd write an album review from Scoop Jackson's point of view. The next day I'd write an album review from Bill Simmons' style or Maureen Dowd style. And over time, those 3 styles merged And that became like the first style that I had. I literally stole like an artist from them.
In hip hop, I'd say sample like an artist, but yeah,
Right.
I mean, I think that's the same thing for me. You know, as I was learning to produce, I'm listening to Premier and how does he chop it like that? And
Right.
as I'm learning to write, I'm listening to Nas. I mean, listen to the best, and eventually you're going to create your own style out of your influences. But at least try to, look at what the best are doing and study them and try to be one of the greats.
Exactly. And add on to it and make sure you give them credit.
Yeah, of course. What was the biggest mistake you made at the beginning while trying to get people to notice you in the industry?
I don't think I asked for enough help. You know, especially once I was hosting Brooklyn Bodega Radio, my plan to expand my brand, especially in 2011, was to invite other people from magazines that I wanted to write for onto the show as guests.
Mm-hmm.
And so that I can highlight them on my platform. They can see the quality of the conversation and say, hey, if you want to write for XXL or whatever, let's do it. And I met a lot of people that way. I met Jason Rodriguez, who was one of my favorite writers, through that same approach. And but I never pitched. Like, that's the thing. Like, I never pitched outlets. I didn't pitch the source. I didn't pitch a story to XXL. I didn't feel like I needed to. And maybe that's a bit arrogant, but I think it also slowed my trajectory even more, potentially.
So
right?
What was your reasoning at the time for not pitching?
I felt like, honestly, I didn't feel like I was good enough. You know, I felt like it would be stronger if I had my own audience, if my own brand had its own success behind it. That would yield bigger results and allow me to skip levels. That's exactly what ended up happening, to be honest.
Right.
But I also didn't have an opportunity to learn from other structures. So I don't really know the internal workings of XXL. I don't know the internal workings of the source.
Right.
And so for my own edification and my ability to grow, I wasn't able to learn from experts in the game.
So you kind of had to teach yourself.
I'm self-taught.
Yeah.
I mean, even in school, like I'm a finance major. I'm not a journalism major. I don't know how to write.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, everything I know about writing is based off what I read or Googling where a semicolon goes.
Right.
You know, I never had a teacher say, hey, you got to write with your own voice and perspective. I just knew that my favorite writers did that.
And you just knew that you wanted to be among the best of them.
Right. I knew that if I could find a way to contextualize what I want to talk about with the effectiveness and efficiency that Maureen Dowd could, there's going to be a place for me.
Right.
But as you know, life is, a lot of times it's who you know as well. And so I wasn't able to increase my Rolodex as quickly as I could have. Those are the early mistakes I think I made.
And I mean, you mentioned having a lot of self-doubt, and as you go into different fields, because now you've expanded into so many different things, and you're in a room with people who are experts in that specific thing, do you ever feel like you have imposter syndrome now? Like you feel like, oh, maybe I don't quite belong? And if you do, or if you have in the past, how do you kind of get over that?
I have never gotten over that.
Yeah.
I've just gotten used to being scared.
Yeah.
Like, every day I live at the edge of my capabilities. And that allows me to push into places that I either hadn't thought of, like radio, now even with, television or with, YouTube videos, more forward-facing things, hosting events. I'm petrified of public speaking.
Yeah.
So these are things I know I have to do.
Right.
And so I just got used to that. And now it's to the point where if I'm not scared, if I'm not nervous, if I'm not uncomfortable, then I know I'm doing something wrong. Because all the biggest successes or leaps happened when I was most uncomfortable.
Right. Yeah.
So.
It's true. I mean, I guess that's what leads to growth, is being uncomfortable. Like, if you're totally comfortable, then what are you going to strive for? You're like, everything's fine.
It's like when you go. It's like going to the gym.
Right.
Right. And you can go to the gym, you can work out, you can go home. You can go to the gym, work out, and all your muscles are super fatigued, right? Muscle failure.
Mm-hmm.
But that's when you grow.
Right.
Your body will figure out how to fix it, and now you're actually stronger.
Right. So of all the successful people you've worked with in your life, who would you say is most successful, and what qualities do they have that you look up to?
Master P.
Okay.
Master P, first rapper to sell drugs, make a rap album, and play in the NBA. You know,
He wasn't in the actual season, right? But he played for the Raptors in the preseason
and the Hornets.
And the Hornets. All right.
If you look at if you Google
that's
Master
impressive
P,
though. You're real on that.
That's who else?
Yeah.
I mean, I know a lot of basketball player rappers now.
Yeah.
I don't know if they sold drugs. And it was more difficult to make an album back then. Mm-hmm. And none of those guys now, I don't consider them rapping superstars. But he was a predecessor of that. And he's also the person that when you talk to artists who work with Master P, most of them have some example of how he was the one who showed them how to make money. Now, whether they followed that or not, or whether they executed on that or not, there's a lot of different responses. But Snoop, for example, talks about how Master P was the first one to really show him how to make money. Necro. I had a great conversation with Necro. Shout out to Necro. Necro was like, you know, Master P was one of the first. See, I fuck with Master P because he showed you how to get it. Like Diddy and everybody else, they would brag about it. But Master P would show you the steps.
That's so key.
It's so key.
Yeah.
Even now, like, Master P is probably one of the most effective, in my opinion, cultural critics right now. Master P was just on the gram the other day talking about how Diddy and everybody was fake for their, sudden reverence of Craig Mack, and that's neither here or there, but whatever he's saying and whether you agree with it or not, it's coming from an honest place. He's not a troll warrior like that.
Right, yeah.
Which I really respect. And Master P is always sober. Like, he doesn't drink. He doesn't party. He'll sell a tequila or a rum, but he's not a drinker. He'll sell marijuana, but he's not a smoker. Master P isn't the best rapper, but he's one of the most known. Mm-hmm. And he's so clear. All the people that I really admire have that in common. They've all at some point killed their addictions. Mm. They've all at some point focused on growing mentally, which is a goal of mine. It's still a challenge for me walking every day.
Right.
But I don't have an example of any of the guys that I love the most who haven't been able to tackle their super ego, really get there.
Right. You read, did you ever read Mindset by Carol Dweck?
I have not, no.
Okay. I mean, it's the same concept that either you have a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And, you're either looking at it like this is who I am and this is who I'm going to be, or you're always looking like I can improve,
That's the difference between like Master P and DMX.
It's true.
DMX, fixed mindset.
Yeah.
DMX is on Fix My Life talking about, why would I want to be sober?
I saw that. It was sad. It was sad to watch. Yeah. Yeah, now he's back in jail.
Fixed mindset.
Right. Yeah. I don't know where we go from there. So when you take someone under your wing, what's one thing that you always make sure to teach them?
It's okay to fail.
Yeah.
You got to fail. All my ideas failed. Everything that led up to the stuff I'm doing now, none of those things worked before. Like the show, The Breakdown, excuse me, it has become something bigger than me in the sense of there's multiple hosts now. Murs hosts the one on DX. I know that Murs is touring on his album, so they're bringing in another artist to host or finalizing that. There's a bunch of channels on YouTube that are taking that same approach now. DJ Booth is doing one in partnership with All Def Digital, and they called it The Breakdown.
Wow.
It's the same thing, right? So, and nobody knows where the show came from. The show is Rachel Maddow's A Block, essentially. right? And it's an open-ended show where there's a question at the end, something to think about. Put something on their minds, give them lines to remember. It's 10 to 15 minutes, and when when we first developed the show for DX, everybody in the company hated it.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody liked it.
Right.
Everybody was like, it's too long. Nobody wants to watch a 10-minute video. This is stupid. Why are we talking about, how do we go from Kendrick Lamar to like racism? I don't get it. How do we bring in these nobody liked it.
Right.
Then it pops off.
How long did that take, you think, until you saw a real
We did the
change?
first breakdown, quote unquote. And the breakdown is a product of the first news show we did with HipHopDX. That was called DX Daily. So that was like a 2 to 3 minute episode that covered 3 stories that happened in the news that day.
Mm-hmm.
And so every Friday, James Kreisberg and Ahmed Sabir Calloway, they were the video team. And myself, every Friday, our goal was to break the daily. Because we didn't like the daily. The daily was, I mean, we didn't really know what we were doing, but it was also a company-wide brainchild in the sense of we had an opportunity with Complex to do video programming. Big shout out to Michael Hogan Miller. He was the COO of the company at that time, and he had the most television and video experience. So we created this show based off of, his direction. And it was kind of dry, and it wasn't going anywhere. Like nobody watched it. Like the numbers were terrible, and it wasn't that much fun. It felt really programmed. It felt really mechanical, and not that that's a bad thing, but you have to start with some sort of structure in order to have your reps, to have your defaults in place.
Right.
And so that's what we learned from that process. Even though that show itself wasn't super successful, it gave us a structure and a foundation so that every Friday our goal was to break the daily. Let's just try something different.
Right.
Instead of 3 stories, let's go in deep on 1 story. And the first one we ever did was breakdown of Jay-Z and Solange's elevator fight.
Right.
So that was the first one. And that was the biggest one we'd done at that time. That one got like 1,000 views. We're like, 1,000 views?
Yeah.
We got 1,000 views, son. And so every Friday, and whatever year that was, I can't remember if that's 2014. It's got to be 2014. So that was the first one. And then the next one we did was on T.I. I think we did one on Hot 97. That was the first time we put I don't have to answer these questions at the end. We did one on Battle Rap, the Battle Rap one. That was right around the time when Disaster got into a fight, and we happened to be there because we were covering BattleRap.com at that time, so we were there with all this exclusive footage. And that one did like 5,000 views.
Yeah.
Right? And then so every Friday we would just go in on one big topic.
Right.
And so, but nobody really watched these things. Like these things weren't that popular. The first one that really got like 100,000 views pretty quickly was the Bobby Shmurda breakdown. And so we broke down Bobby Shmurda getting arrested with all these guns. But then at the same time, police brutality was a huge story. And Bobby Shmurda was trending higher than everybody who was getting, shot by the police. And so that's when we were at the end, like, this is the craziest part. Like everyone is so fixated on this wild street kid with all these guns that it eclipses conversations that are much more important.
That's so insane.
It's so insane.
Yeah.
So, point is we were doing this for years, and our first biggest success from a number standpoint was the Bobby Shmurda one. The biggest success ultimately was we would use the Friday breakdown to cover Wu-Tang heavily. So we would cover the $1 Million album. We covered A Better Tomorrow was around that time. We covered the idea that maybe RZA might not ever do another album might never lead another album with Wu-Tang because of all the drama that was around it. And because of our Wu-Tang coverage, Silver Rings reached out to us maybe a year, like just in general. He was like, yeah, this is good stuff. I appreciate it. Then when the $1 Million album sold to Martin Shkreli, Silver Rings hit me up and said, yo, Martin Shkreli wants to talk to somebody in hip hop. I'm going to pass him your number, and then you'll be the first person to interview him.
And was this when people didn't really know his background?
He had done
They just knew
at
that.
all.
Yeah.
At all. Only thing they knew was he was the guy who raised prices on.
They did know that. That came out pretty quickly, right?
Within a week, I'm talking to him about that Wu-Tang album. So those two things are in conjunction. He did a brief conversation with Bloomberg, didn't say anything salacious. My conversation, he's dissing Wu-Tang, talking about how he has had cars parked outside of people's houses, threatened people, talking about Taylor Swift, wanting Taylor Swift to suck his dick, like the craziest shit ever. This was the biggest story in the history of HipHopDX. This interview right now has been linked back to by 7,000 different publications across the world.
Wow.
Right, it's huge. Now, this is all a product of the breakdown.
And at the time, what are you thinking when you're talking to this guy? Are you, in part of your mind, are you thinking this is going to be great for ratings, or is that not even in your
Not at
conscious?
all. I wasn't thinking about ratings, but I did want to. My thought was that I really need this guy's personality to seep through this conversation. So,
could you tell he's a douchebag from like the first second, or was he able to?
Yeah, it bleeds through the conversation.
Okay.
You should definitely read it if you haven't seen it after this. But
I feel like I have, but it's been a few years. So.
It's been a few years.
Yeah.
My whole thing was I'm going to challenge him on the things he says, but I'm not going to talk over him because I don't need to sun this person. He's who he is. But I also know it's important that bleeds through as much as possible because I have my own feelings, but in this conversation, I'm a journalist. I'm pushing back when he says stuff that doesn't make sense. He has a response for it.
Right.
He says something else, push back when it doesn't make sense. He has a response for it. Ask another question. Same step and repeat. Yeah. I don't need to be a part of that story.
Yeah,
he's the story. And actually, he's not the story. At this point, for me, the $1 Million album is the story. Here's a guy, hip-hop just sold a $2 million album that nobody's heard. To me, that's what I'm going into this story as. Right. His first thing is, hey, I want to tell you, I want to bail out Bobby Shmurda. Like, hey, I want to tell you.
I do remember this story, actually. I remember everything about it now,
right.
Now that you bring it up.
So that ends up being the biggest success of the early breakdowns, and it wasn't even a breakdown. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, but that's what 18 months of actual journalism will lead you to. Like, you cover all these stories, these small things that nobody cares about, and then you land the big fish. So we had the reps at that point, right? So now that was 2015, let's say, early 16 or whatever it was. By that July, now we've shot breakdowns 15 minutes, 17 minutes. We've done them on Cash Money. We've done them on police brutality. We've learned a lot of things. We've done them on the roof. We've done them in the office. We've done them on the steps downstairs. We film these things all over the place. We're fast. We turn them around in one day, and they're still not moving. And so I asked Torre, the writer, who I think is the greatest rap hip-hop culture journalist of all time.
Yeah.
He went from writing for Rolling Stone to hosting his own show on MSNBC, or being a co-host on The Cycle on MSNBC, which was about politics. So he was able to take it farther than just the music.
Right.
And so I got a chance to talk to him, and I sent him one that I was really happy about. And it was about whether lean was killing Lil Wayne, because Lil Wayne was having all these seizures while his music was being terrible. And he was like, yo, this is really good. I think that you're spending too much time wrapping up the weekend news. So by the time you get to the point where you're going bigger, you spend so much time covering stuff that people have already heard about. So less news, more editorial. And his point was, this is how we got in trouble with The Cycle. We ended up being a weekly news wrap-up show when everybody had the news.
There's a bunch of those already, right? Yeah.
Right. So we made a shift, and we were like, I told James, I'm like, look, man, this week, we're not even going to do no news. I don't care what happened this week. I want to talk about Tupac and De La Soul's forgotten rap beef. Now we're 360. Because when I was with Brooklyn Bodega, my first radio show was
De La Soul.
Now, the first major interview I ever had was De La Soul at that Brooklyn Hip Hop Festival. Mm-hmm. And the question I always wanted to know was, why Tupac dissed him on Against All Odds? When he goes, you look like Larry Holmes, flabby and sick. In the background, he goes, look at De La Soul. I never knew that. So I asked them all that day.
You did ask him the first time you talked to him.
The first time I talked to him.
Okay.
And so I have all that audio from then, this article that nobody read from 2010
right.
that has individual quotes from all of them. And so I was like, you know what? This week's breakdown is just going to be on Tupac and De La Soul's forgotten rap beef. Boom. Biggest breakdown we ever did. So now we had the formula. We had 2 years worth of reps. We started off from like 4 minutes on Jay-Z versus Solange. We've gone 17 minutes on police brutality. Nobody really watching either.
Right.
We've shot these things in so many different ways. We've shown that we can have solid journalism in these things, even if there's not a big audience, to the point where we break the biggest story in hip-hop around the Wu-Tang album. And Martin Shkreli, who is now a worldwide plague or phenomenon, however you want to look at him.
Right.
And so now we got to the point where we can do this under any circumstance, even if we're just talking about rap history. And after that, we were off. We're gone.
Do you think they were pushing back at the beginning, the powers that be or the suits or whatever you want to call it, just because they don't credit people enough? They feel like their attention span is way too short and they can't digest enough information, or they click away too quickly?
I think groupthink is a powerful motivator, whether positive or negative. And even now to a degree, I mean, people's concerns are with their views, how viral something is.
Yeah.
They forget that people will watch a Netflix series on their phone on a treadmill. Mm-hmm. If it's dope, it's dope. Maybe we weren't dope enough, which is very possible. I mean, our numbers weren't that great. I'm definitely a better host now than I was in the beginning.
Yeah.
But I think, and we're putting resources into this, and so we're not necessarily getting the return that we expected. I don't think that here's one thing I will say. They didn't tell us, nobody told me to stop doing it. They just didn't like it.
Right.
Nobody in the company was really watching them back then. People had all these questions. There was a lot of whispers behind the scenes. But big shout out to Sharif Cherry, and he's the CEO of HipHopDX. He never told me to stop.
Yeah.
And
it paid off.
It paid off.
Yeah.
It definitely paid off.
I mean, because for me, how I look at it, like people who are like us, who are looking to improve and grow, there's no time constrictions on that. So, a long form interview is interesting because you could get a lot deeper instead of just, the very surfacey stuff that you can only get through in 10, 15 minutes.
Exactly. I mean, that's how I look at stuff, right?
Yeah.
Like I need something in general for just the type of content that I enjoy personally. And I feel like culture and hip hop and music and technology to a degree spends a lot of time trying to indoctrinate 9-year-olds, 12-year-olds, 15-year-olds, and trying to make stuff that appeals to these kids, because obviously these are the people with disposable income. Yeah. These kids got allowance money. They don't got to pay no bills. They ain't got no job to go to. So if you can get 80% of every $20 every 12-year-old in the country got, not only do you get a lot of cash up front, but you also have the opportunity to impress your brand on the most impressionable population on the planet. I get it. My whole point is we're talking about music. We're talking about hip-hop culture. We're talking about technology. We're talking about video games. These are things that we all grew up with. These are things that we know reflexively. Again, we all know the theme song to The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. So we're going to be 70, 80, 90 years old with our Google contact lenses on, playing Madden, listening to Doggy Style.
Yeah.
There's a lot of growth in the amount of money that we can make from a population that really only knows this.
Right.
There's riches in niches.
Yeah. No, I totally agree. And I mean, it kills art. Just trying to put everything in this little box, and but that's the nice thing about being independent, which you still are. You're doing Ambrosia for Heads, right?
I'm working with Ambrosia for Heads. I'm working with Empire Distribution.
Right.
I'm on the All Out Show with Rude Jude on Tuesdays on Shade 45.
Right.
And I have my own channel, The Company Man, on YouTube.
Yeah. But all of these things, you're your own boss. There's no one telling you need to do this or you need to do that. They want you there, so you're there. Basically.
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, exactly.
And now, with Empire and just throughout the years, you've obviously watched the game in terms of marketing and branding and stuff like that. So what would you say is the most interesting way you've seen an artist brand themselves over the years? If there was one that comes to mind.
It's hard to think about that now because I feel like every artist is so branded. The last thing I think about is their music. Everyone, I turn on here's a conversation I think a lot of people have, right? Actually, Static Selective was talking about how he did an interview with Kyle. Big shout out to Kyle from HipHopDX this week, and she was like, he was talking about how he hates it when people brand anything that's not trap music as old school hip hop. Joey Badass is old school hip hop somehow. Right.
Yeah.
Which kind of fractures the culture.
Right.
Now, mumble rap has been a scourge in the culture for a long time for various reasons. And people question the skills that a lot of these artists actually have based on, tenets of hip hop, based on the history of hip hop, and honestly based off of what the most successful rappers sell first. Jay-Z's, for example, the Eminems, the Kendrick Lamars, the Chance the Rappers. These guys sell lyrics first, essentially. But you have so many guys like Tekashi 6ix9ine or even Migos in their early days where we see this spectacle happening online or on Instagram that's grabbing all these views.
Right.
And now because it's Instagram popular or social media popular, now the media is covering it heavily. Now rap media. And now kind of every media is rap media. You know, you turn on MSNBC again, Ari Melbourne will sit there and quote some lyrics to you.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So these guys have gotten really good at letting their personalities shine first, letting their conflicts shine first. You take someone like Cardi B. She has an atypical entrance into superstardom, right? Like she started off stripping and then dating and then loving hip-hopping and then Bodak Yellowing. Homegirl doesn't even have an album out.
Yeah.
She's one of the biggest stars on the planet. I see that approach so much now that is almost the standard.
Yeah.
I'm not sure how unique any of this stuff really is, as much as I don't think any of it has to do with traditionally the entry point that we had for most of these artists, which was the music.
Yes, that is very correct.
The entry point isn't the music anymore.
And yeah, I mean, for me, that's also, I've had a few conversations with younger artists and quickly realized when we were younger and artists were trying to get noticed, they really put a lot of time into their craft. They put a lot into their lyrics. They'd go over them over and over and make sure every little line and every, rhyme was tight. And now that amount of energy is put into their imagery. They might put 80% into the marketing themselves and 20% into making music. And that's what shows to me. But it became clear that these younger artists aren't any, like the older artists aren't any smarter because their lyrics sound smarter. It's just their energy's in a different place. They're very smart at marketing themselves.
Right.
They just don't put the same thought into their lyrics.
I mean, what's so funny is like you take an artist like Dr. Dre, and the people Dr. Dre worked with were awesome at marketing, right? Almost every first song that Dr. Dre put out from any artist underneath him was saying their name.
Right.
Snoop Dogg's first name, Snoop Dogg.
X to the Z.
X to the Z.
Right.
It's the one they call Nocturnal, Eminem, I'm Slim, all this stuff.
My name is.
Hi, my name is.
Yeah.
Like, you know who this person is.
You're right. I never thought about
based
that.
Based on the first thing.
Yeah, right.
Right. And I used to have this thing where I'm like, yo, if you're not violent, you're not Interscope. Right? Like,
yeah.
I felt like Interscope essentially had two options. Like, you could either be Murder was the case, or you could be a Black Eyed Pea. You had to be on the fringes of whatever it was. You had to be really violent, really hard, really angry. They gave Eminem a chainsaw. He was chopping up boy bands,
Yes.
you know, and then, or you can go really, you know, Black Eyed Peas and will.i.am. And will.i.am is one of the most talented people ever. He can do stuff for NWA, he can do stuff for Dre, he can do stuff for Fergie.
Yeah.
Right? No knock. But this is where people gravitate towards. People gravitate towards extremes. Nobody cares about who's in the middle.
Yeah.
They care about who's in first place or who's in last place. For example, like I'm a diehard Chicago Bulls fan, right? I'm more interested in my favorite team when we're really great or when we really suck.
You could get a number 1 draft pick.
Right.
Yes.
I've got something to talk about.
Right.
I really don't care that much when they barely make the playoffs.
Yeah.
And I think that's where social media has, now that that's the first entry point, marketing kind of is our first entry point now. And that's where stuff lives. The people who are wilding the most colorful, the most face tats, saying the most salacious stuff about the most legendary people with the least number of facts, they're going to have everybody grabbing attention.
Right.
They're going to go viral in that direction. And then if you get over there and you're like, yo, I kind of fuck with this Tekashi kid. It reminds me of MOP. You never know. Oh, I kind of like Bodak Yellow. It's kind of dope, you know? Then now you've got a viral song, a Spotify account in the multi-millions, etc.
You've had a lot of these conversations directly with a lot of these artists, right? So
Fortunately.
So for you, was there anyone that really surprised the shit out of you that we were just like, wow, this person's so smart, but from their music, you wouldn't have gathered that?
Who's somebody that I would think about right now? Someone recent. There's been a number of them. Over time, there's been a lot of them.
Right.
Right. Like Royce the 5'9" is someone to me that. Here's something I think is really interesting about Royce. He's been around forever, but right now he's probably making his best raps ever. Mm-hmm. And it happened when he got sober. So I'm so conditioned to thinking about how great drugs make music or make art that to see him stronger now that he's sober, to me, and how he was able to navigate through that was a different level of foresight. And I'm not talking about branding or marketing or that kind of stuff. I'm talking about like how you actually realize the seriousness you need to take yourself in order to maximize yourself. So he comes to mind immediately. There's been a ton of people.
Yeah.
I mean, like I mentioned Master P earlier. Obviously Diddy's another one who I'm always inspired by and impressed by in every conversation. I mean, there's just so many right now. I think that if we know somebody, they're doing something pretty cool and they're doing something right.
Yeah, that's not by accident.
It's not by accident. Yeah. Exactly. I'll tell you this, speaking on, just people I'm really impressed by. Ghazi Shami, CEO of Empire. One of the reasons why I decided to work with Empire was because on a personal level, the only thing I'm really missing, in my point of view, is an understanding of how the industry actually works, right? Like I don't have a concept of profitability and scale from an industry side. I don't really understand the full supply chain in selling music. So here's Empire, and they're the largest urban independent label, right? And they have a non-exclusive model and touch points at every level of artists. Like they have everybody from Diddy and T.I. to like Drum and Brockhampton. And so just sitting and talking to them about how they market and promote new artists or even a video is wild interesting to me. Like one thing I never considered is that, let's say you're putting out a YouTube video or you got a new song. First thing you want to do, song got to start right away.
Right.
Because it makes the video less watchable. I hadn't thought about that in a literal sense, right? Like anytime you have some cool artistic thing at the beginning, yeah, that's kind of dope. But a lot of times people are just going to YouTube or going to whatever video outlet for the song.
Right.
They're not looking for the whole experience every time. So you're gonna truncate your time watched by having longer intros. You're gonna make it less rewatchable. The replay value is gonna decrease. And it's just that granular level of things that they think about on a regular basis as it applies to artists at every level without changing, the artist's music or whatever they're doing. Like, you can have this awesome expose ending, but it's got to get in there hard. You got to come in hard like it's a battle rap. You got to be punchy, get it, that's why I fucked your bitch, you fat motherfucker, get money, and then, you move on. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, so, I mean, you mentioned they're non-exclusive, right? So if they sign someone like Brockhampton, who's an up-and-comer, you put out an album, it's building them to the next step in their career. What does that look like? They just then kind of like, oh, if you want to go on your way, you're on your way. But they put this money into helping build their name to that point.
Well, Empire's evolving now. So, they have label services that are more dynamic than when they started as simply distribution. So, some artists will get maybe a 2-album deal.
Right.
I don't think that we're doing any 3-album deals, maybe 1. Don't hold me to that. But it's really up to the artist. Like XXXTentacion's a great example, right? We put out his first project, and it was huge. It did like 80,000. He moved on to his next project. He did 130,000 this week. Now, from our standpoint, we still have a great relationship with him. He's free to go do whatever he wants. Yeah. But at the same time, he's always an advocate for us, and we move on. We put out Section 80. Kendrick Lamar's Section 80.
Yeah.
Like they still have a great relationship with TDE. We end up educating a lot of artists on ways for them to be successful so that they get to the point that when it's time to get that bag, they also don't lose themselves or their art or their ownership. It's a lot easier.
Kind of the Master P model, right? Like teaching people and putting them up on game so they're not lost or someone's just taking all their money.
Yeah, and without taking their masters.
Right. Like they own all their masters.
The artists still get their masters.
So I mean that model has to be appealing to artists because it's advantageous for them.
There's nothing less cool than not owning the stuff you make.
Yeah. Yeah. So I know you know the saying, you're an average of the 5 people you spend the most time with, right?
Yes.
But you seem to do a lot on your own. I know that you obviously have a team now, but I just see you hustling on your own. Who are those 5 people that help inspire you that are around you?
Laurel DeWitt. Laurel DeWitt is she is my best friend, my girlfriend, my fiance. She's one of the most inspirational people I've ever met in my entire life. She has the Laurel DeWitt line. She dresses everybody from Beyonce to J-Lo to Shakira. And just seeing her put together an entire metal couture business movement, a product that really doesn't exist, for, when I meet her, in 2009, her radio show came on before Brooklyn Bodega radio back in the day. That reminds me that the impossible is always just a thought away.
Right.
100%, bar none.
Right.
I spend a lot of time on group texts, talking to just like Fuzzy, Fuzzy Fantab, Felicia, Kara, Carl Cherry. We're always on group texts, right? So they all do a ton of different stuff in the music industry. But just seeing them be able to progress in their careers digitally every day, multiple times a day. Big shout out to Jerry L. Those guys, they're like my closest industry friends, Mark Batson. Mark Batson is a super producer, a composer. He produced all these Eminem projects, a lot of work for Dr. Dre, Alicia Keys, Dave Matthews Band. He put out India Ari's Grammy-winning projects. He created those. with her. And he reminds me all the time that, like, his biggest successes came when he came with the most focus.
Mm-hmm.
And just sitting down and just staying focused, like intense focus on something that you want to accomplish. And all of a sudden, the world is a lot bigger and a lot smaller.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Reggie Williams, he's the CEO of Ambrosia For Heads and Jake Payne.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys have been able to transition wherever the music industry, wherever the media industry has gone.
Yeah.
And they've never lost their integrity.
Right.
They're probably the two people, along with Ghazi and Nima, who I don't have anybody who talks shit about them.
Mm-hmm.
I don't have, and there's people in media who talk a lot of shit about me.
Yeah.
That's just what comes with running a publication.
Right.
That's what comes with being any kind of leader.
Do you think that's from a jealousy standpoint?
Who knows?
What's the biggest thing you hear that people talk shit about?
With me?
Yeah. Like, what's the biggest thing that's come back to you or has come back numerous times?
There's a couple of people who are really upset about an article that I wrote or that I published. So I get, people who are close with them, still holding criticism around this, this piece. I've got people who worked for me at DX who felt like I was too much of a public face and not in the granular day-to-day editorial execution. And I take both of those.
Yeah.
When I took over DX, first of all, my responsibilities at DX, my job description, didn't include writing.
Yeah.
It
really?
didn't. It included hiring, firing, content strategy, new acquisitions, and new products.
Okay.
And be the public face and go out.
Right.
And build reputation. Because DX was all virtual. It was, everybody was in a different city and just writing articles all day.
Yeah.
That was the job description.
Right.
So when we opened the office in LA, my first goal was, look, if we can hold down LA, if we can make everybody in LA know who we are and where we are, we're going to be good.
Mm-hmm.
Because LA is the second biggest city in the country.
Yeah.
And America is the biggest media country in the world. So if we can hold down LA, then now we're one of the most important publications in the world.
Right. Do you think there's something to that for everyone who's interested in being this industry, artists, writers? Do you need to be in a metropolitan area like New York or LA, or nowadays can you do it from anywhere?
You can do it from anywhere. It's easier to do it where the music is being created.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier to do it when there's people coming through your town. It's easier to do it when you can build relationships with people on a level separate from asking them for stuff.
Right. Yeah.
It's easier to do it when you're in a better position to help, not necessarily them, but the people that they work with who need help.
Yeah.
So my first year in LA, my goal was to go out as much as possible while wearing a HipHopDX t-shirt. Everybody who invited me anywhere, I said yes.
Yeah.
And so I would be at Low End Theory one day. I'd be at industry basketball games another day. I'd be on Revolt another day. I'd be wherever. I'd be in the hills another day.
Yeah.
Anybody invited me anywhere, I said yes.
Right.
End of that year, I went out. I did the math. I went out like 6 days a week for a year.
Yeah.
I didn't do that in college.
Right.
The next year, the plan was to take everybody that we met, everybody that I met, invite them back to the office. So now everybody that I met knew me, and now they knew exactly where we're at. So now the whole company's set.
Yeah.
Any writer, freelancer, staff member who wants to go anywhere, they know us. Anybody who's trying to get in touch with us for something good or for something bad or for a feature, they know where we're at.
Yeah.
Mission accomplished.
Yeah. Yeah.
Now, that comes with a disconnect, I understand, from the staff or from the execution on certain articles. And I own that. But that's a criticism I get. And that's why.
Yeah. So as you're building your network and you mentioned the people that you spend a lot of time with are successful, basically. As you grew, were there certain people who were important in your life that you had to leave behind because they were kind of dragging you down?
Yeah. A number of times. I definitely don't want to. I'm not.
No, I don't.
I'm
not asking for names. I'm just saying, like, how did you get through that? What did you do?
When I was growing up, I moved. My family moved every 5 years. So my dad, every time he got promoted, we got relocated to another city. So I'm kind of used to. I didn't realize this since I was growing up, but that compartmentalized my life in a way that was unexpected. Meaning, I'm used to people just not being around.
Right.
I'm used to moving on, and some people don't come with you.
Right.
I'm used to moving on, and people who didn't come with me came back.
Yeah.
So that's how I look at it. I believe that the most important relationships in my life are worth fighting for. And I also know that certain relationships aren't necessarily worth fighting for if I'm the only person putting the effort into it.
Yeah.
And on the flip side of that, if someone's having a negative impact on my life, on my goals, my career, my energy, how important are they really?
Right. Yeah.
If I'm sharing with people things that I need and being attentive to things that they need, but that's not reciprocal, what are we talking about?
Yeah. Yeah. You learn quickly. And I think as you experience more in this industry, you start to see people for who they are. You kind of can see through people who are not reciprocating in your relationships.
Look, I'm fortunate because the people I worked with at Brooklyn Bodega, for example, most of us are still really tight.
Yeah.
Run is my best friend. Kelly Jones and I, she's doing incredible stuff. We're super tight. John Heredia, I officiated his wedding. We're still super tight. We have a cluster of us that are still really close.
Yeah.
But there's probably another 20 to 50 people that came through that organization who we were working together in one way or another, and they just weren't ready, or they weren't as active, or they didn't believe in the stuff that we wanted to do, or they didn't like us that much.
Yeah.
And they're doing their thing. We didn't necessarily grow together. Sometimes the world is like that.
Right, right. So over these, 7 years or so since Brooklyn Bodega, was there a rock bottom moment that you hit that you almost just gave this up? And if so, what did you do to get through that?
Fall 2012. Now, I got fired from my volunteer job at Brooklyn Bodega.
Okay.
January 2010. And Wes told me he had brand concerns because people started looking at Brooklyn Bodega as my company and me being the face, because I was running the website.
Right.
I was hosting the events. I'm hosting the radio show. I'm bringing all these new artists around all the time. I'm the point of contact for most people and the most accessible person in the organization and the most forward-facing. Right. So that just tends to happen. And so Wes wanted to bring back that, he wanted to forward his status in the company. He owned the company. He wanted to assume that position again, right, and felt like I was in conflict. So he let me go over email. Right.
After how long?
After 2 years. Okay. I don't fault him for that. I was definitely disappointed in how the conversation went. But if you feel like, hey, someone else is getting a little too much light in your organization, you do what you got to do. Same thing happened with Andre Harrell and Diddy. You hear these stories all the time.
Right.
But Brooklyn Bodega was my biggest outlet. At least my most consistent one. Mm-hmm. I mean, I was writing great for DX. At that point, as a writer, I really started getting my stride. But at that point, I was on radio 5 days a week because I was hosting the Bodega show every Friday. But Monday through Thursday, PNC, they gave me my own show because Bodega was the second biggest show on that channel after I took it over, just behind Combat Jack. So I was still on air 4 days a week, and I was getting a lot of reps. But I just lost Bodega in that January. Now that May, PNC goes down because they want to renovate.
That I remember. I was there at the time.
Right.
Yes,
'Cause
that is why we left.
That's
That's
why
why
you
we
left.
left with our show. Yeah.
Because they wanted to renovate.
Right.
They said it was going to take a month. It took like 9.
Yeah.
Right. So now I'm not on air at all, which is my most consistent voice. Now, I was able to stack so many reps doing interviews because I was on air 5 days a week.
Right.
One of the reasons why I can hold down a show now by myself is because I had so many reps being on radio by myself. One of the reasons why I can do interviews with preparation or not is because I was interviewing like 6 people a week. I can interview 9 people at one time. I can interview one person. I can make it 1 minute. I can make it 20 minutes because of all the reps I was getting at that time. So by April 2012, all that's gone. And I'm also at that point writing for Steve Stout's Tanning of America, which is the first time I got a check big enough to pay my rent. Now,
That's a huge accomplishment.
Huge accomplishment.
Yes.
Big shout out to Jada and Toshi. And so that site only lasted for the campaign around that book. And then by June of that year, that's gone. So my most public outlets, most consistent public outlets are gone. My revenue is gone. So I didn't know what I was going to do. Combat Jack offered me the opportunity to take my show over to where he was going to do his podcast. But I was like, you know what? This is a great time to really just focus on being a writer. I felt like I was getting a little too thin. So I'm getting more work from DX, which is helpful. And then DJ Sav 1 and I start working on a book. And so we start doing all these interviews. And it really helps me learn from a lot of brilliant people. And but I'm making no money. So September 2012 comes along. Now, when I left the bank, again, I had a 5-year plan.
Yeah.
This is year 3.
Right.
I'm running out of money.
Yeah.
I thought I had enough money saved the last 5 years. Nope. Looks like I got enough money for just about 4. And I'm like, yo, what am I going to do? New York's expensive. What does this look like if I go broke? I'm like, well, maybe I'll go back to the bank. I'll go back to the bank, get my money tight, I'll come back outside. Nah, man, I can't do that. I'm making too much progress. I won't be active. I won't be present.
Right.
When people don't see you, they forget you. All right, well, what does this look like if I just go completely broke? All right, well, I guess I can move back to South Carolina with my parents. Well, what does that look like if I have to move home? Well, my dad had Liberty Tax franchises at the time, so I was like, okay, I can go help with the family business.
Yeah.
I still know editors, so I can freelance. I can still do album reviews. I can interview people over the phone. 2 of my fraternity brothers, they had nightclubs in the city. I know a few artists. I can bring artists through Greenville, interview them there. Okay, I'm still making progress.
Right.
So I'm like, now, okay, well, I guess if I got to do some South Carolina, this is what it got to be. So I was like, fine, I'm just going to ride this till the wheels fall off. The next week, I got Homeboy Sandman album review, which was important to me personally because the first album review I ever did for DX was Homeboy Sandman. Mm-hmm. And I pitched it for The Good Son because that's one of the first relationships I made when I was covering Brooklyn Bodega Show and Prove.
Yeah.
Hanging out late at EO Dub.
Right.
Just trying to meet artists. I pitched something on my own. I guess I said I didn't pitch anything, but yeah, this is one thing I did pitch to Jake. It's probably the 3rd article I ever wrote for DX, maybe the 2nd. This was like, okay, cool. I got 2 of them now. 2 weeks after that, I get the album review for Lupe Fiasco's Food and Liquor. Always
That's huge for you, right?
Huge.
Yeah.
That's how my career started.
Right.
Finally got a Lupe review. A month after that, they invite me to A3C to do on-camera interviews for all the artists, at A3C for DX. I got the chance to spend significant time with the COO, Michael Hogan Miller. We got to talk about the business behind editorial and media. Mm-hmm. Talk about how it's really like a tech company. It's less than like a magazine. So we were able to build a relationship. A week after that, I get Good Kid, Mad City album review, which is one of the biggest albums ever at this point.
Yeah.
At that time, it was the biggest album review in the history of the publication. in terms of most read.
That was through DX.
Through DX.
Okay.
All this is DX.
Yeah.
And I got the review right. Like, so it holds up,
Right.
even to this day.
Right.
3 weeks after that, they invite me to their company-wide meeting in New York, and I got to sit in on the company meeting, asking all kinds of questions because it's my first time seeing the numbers. And the day after that, they offered me Editor-in-Chief of HipHopDX.
That's amazing.
I was less than 3 months from achieving everything that I had left the bank to accomplish.
And I think so many people in this industry have a similar story where they're so close to giving up or so close to having to move home or something like that. Do you attribute it to anything? I mean, some people, it's a religious thing. They believe in God. Some people believe there's an energy you put out there. And
I don't think there's a difference between either of those.
Yeah.
I think that's just a conversation on perspective. You can believe in any religion. I think faith is something that's at the core of all of it. If you want to attribute that to Jesus or the universe,
Right.
you have to believe.
Yeah.
That's the first thing you got to do.
Yeah.
You have to expect that something can be different that's never been different before.
Right.
Because that's how much faith you have. You have to.
That is hard to see that. It's hard to see beyond what you've seen.
It's imagination.
Yeah.
It's only your ability to believe in yourself or the things you want to accomplish. That can happen with anything.
Yeah.
There's a whole NBA full of people who believe they can make it to the NBA.
There's millions of other people who also believe that never made it to the NBA.
Then they didn't work hard enough. Simple.
Yeah.
Or they didn't believe hard enough. There isn't anything that separates us other than our will to get through the worst times. Facts.
Yeah.
I mean, I just left DX last year.
Right.
I got back from speaking in Oxford. Next week I quit. I had no plan.
Yeah.
I had no money.
But you knew it was all going to work out.
It worked
You'd seen
out.
it happen before, right?
It happened before.
Yeah.
I left the bank, no reps, no relationships, no repetition, writing about Sun Toucher and Johnny Voltic. What's the difference?
Yeah. Except now you're further along and now you have more under your belt.
Now the challenges are scarier.
Right.
One of my goals is to host the Grammys. So when I host the Grammys, am I going to be sweating on stage? You can't be cool sweating on stage. How far do I have to fail in order to achieve that? When my goal is to be a U.S. Senator,
Yeah.
what type of L's do I got to take? What's my pride got to feel like? How public can my reputation be damaged?
Yeah.
How strong am I? How strong-willed?
Right.
I know it'd be easier for me than it was for Barack Obama.
Yeah.
There's examples. I fundamentally don't believe that there isn't anything that isn't possible. I don't believe that. I fundamentally believe that my ability to, again, live at the fringes of my capability, to make myself as uncomfortable as possible, is required to accomplish the goals that I have. I have to be really focused. Like, one of the things I kept talking about in this conversation is the number of people that I admire who are sober. I love marijuana.
Yeah.
Alcohol tastes great.
Agreed.
But if the people that I respect the most don't lean on those things, and in my own personal experience, to be truthful, the clearer I am, the better I am.
Yeah.
Well, now I know that's something that I have to get past. So I used to, like I said in the beginning, I have a terrible fear of public speaking, and I had 3 tells. My hands would shake, my voice would crack, and I just start sweating.
Yeah.
Over time, my hands don't shake, my voice doesn't crack, but I still sweat.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just a hot-natured person.
Right.
So I just printed out towels that had my logo on them. Now it's marketing.
Yeah. Smart.
You know what I'm saying?
You ever read Stoicism? Are you a Stoic person? Because I feel like your philosophy is very Stoic, of putting yourself in uncomfortable situations because you know that's going to make you stronger.
I've never read that, but
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of like Marcus Aurelius and stuff like that. That's very, that's the philosophy is like you have to make sure that you are uncomfortable because you want to put yourself in the mindset of like, how bad could it really be? Like if I eat beans and rice for a week, is that going to kill me?
Right.
Like if I wear the same outfit for a week, is that going to kill me? If I get to that point in my life, I know I'll be able to handle it. So worst case scenario, how am I going to respond to this?
it's the only option we have.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, because if you're not getting better, you're getting worse because the world moves.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like, do you want to be what's it look like to be the best website right now? I don't know. But I know what the best Instagram account is.
Yeah.
I know that streaming is running everything.
Right.
I know people write awesome editorials for free on Facebook, and I know Facebook will promote their own stuff before they promote yours.
That's true. Yeah. So you're obviously not afraid of failure at this point.
If I'm not failing, I feel like something's wrong.
So what would you say to someone who's afraid to take that leap of faith?
Then they should be very comfortable not accomplishing their goals. The only difference is that if you don't take that leap of faith, the pain you feel will last forever.
Yeah.
If you fail, it'll hurt in the moment. It'll hurt tomorrow. Maybe it'll hurt a week. Maybe it'll hurt a year. But the pain will go away.
Right.
If you never try, you got to live with that for the rest of your life. Like, there's a few things I didn't try as a kid that I'm like, man, I probably should have done that. I still think about.
Yeah.
Like, at one point I wanted to go to the NBA, and I remember the day that I stopped liking practice. What if I had never stopped liking practice?
You never know. Then would you have enjoyed your life like you do now? I mean, I feel like you're so passionate about what you do now.
I'll tell you, I don't know.
Yeah. I actually spoke at my college like a month or so ago, and they read out like my accomplishments and things I'd done, and they said varsity basketball. I'm like, okay, yeah, I guess they have that I played varsity basketball, but I did not play varsity basketball. So like the parents' weekend that my mom came to visit, I thought I was on the team. The coach gave me like my warm-ups and my sneakers and everything, and they were supposed to have this big parade of all the teams. Like it's kind of like an annual thing that they do. And that day, the coach pulls me into the office and says, like, I have too many people, I can't keep you. Like, I was the last player cut from my varsity team.
Oh, wow.
But the thing that I got out of that is that's what led me to getting a radio show and starting to DJ. I DJ'd all the parties. And, like, if that wouldn't have happened, I don't know what I would have done. I mean, I probably wasn't going to make it to the NBA. I wanted to play college basketball, but that was kind of my goal for that part of my life. But I look at it as a blessing in disguise, now that I can look back at it.
If you don't try, you have to eat that forever.
Right.
There's been like girls I wanted to holler at. And then like I never tried. And now I look at them on Facebook and I'm like, she's still fine. Maybe she could be mine. I don't look at those as regrets, but the point is I didn't try, so I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, you never know.
Like the point is if you're not willing to try something, then be prepared to never know.
Yeah.
And if you can deal with that, I guess it's okay.
Yeah. Do you set goals frequently?
I do. I need to. I'm actually in the point now of like redefining my goals. Not my long-term goals. My long-term goals are still static. But now my new short-term goals. What I want to accomplish this week, what I want to accomplish this month, what I want to accomplish this quarter. One of the things I need to get better at is syndicating the content on my own YouTube channel. And so there's a number of places that have reached out to me. I've just been a little slow to get back to them, or I'm a little bit more focused on things I'm learning with Empire, or some just emotional, personal things that I've been going through at the same time. And so that's actually at the forefront of my to-do list as part of my spring cleaning.
Yeah.
Taxes. I ain't done my taxes yet.
Better get on that. I always file for an extension, and this is the first year I did not, so I'm proud of myself. It's already into my account, and I'm good.
It's all happening.
Yeah. So if you could choose one thing, being rich, famous, content, or free, which would it be?
Rich, famous, content, or free? That's interesting. Either rich or free.
Yeah.
I think both of those come with a freeness.
Yes.
To a degree. I don't think
you could be rich but still be under someone's control in terms of, your job or, something like that.
I guess maybe wealthy would be. I'd rather be free.
Yeah.
I haven't made a decision based on money since I left the bank.
Right.
And my hairline hasn't receded. And I've been happy pretty much 100% consistently.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And every time I needed money, it came through.
Yeah.
I make more money now than I made at the bank. I think if I stayed at the bank, I would have made more money over time. But who knows? I could have got fired the next year or the year after.
Yeah.
You've seen the upheaval that you've seen in financial services. So who knows what the future would have held for me. But I definitely enjoy life more.
Right.
I've definitely had experiences that were outside of my expectations. Again, my goal is to be the greatest rap writer of all time, right? But I didn't know that came with debating at Oxford.
Yeah.
I didn't know I'll be debating whether Kanye West is more relevant than William Shakespeare.
Yeah.
I didn't know that happened. I didn't know that, hosting a Grammy event. I hosted a whole panel on hip-hop and mental illness for the Recording Academy. I didn't know that came along with it. Yeah. I didn't know talking on camera came along with it. So there's been so many different situations that push me as a person, past my own insecurities. Again, I'm terrified of public speaking. I do it for a living.
Right.
So
if you can do that, anyone out there listening can do whatever they want to do.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
If Elon Musk can send his own car to outer space, you can accomplish your goals, man.
Right. Yeah, I always look at it like that too. I mean, the odds might be against you, but I always say if someone else can do it, then why can't I? I mean, someone's done it or is doing something that I want to be doing, it's possible.
Yeah.
It's out there. And Elon Musk comes up with stuff that no one's even close to done before. I mean, it's crazy. Like, to privatize the space system who would have even believed that was possible?
Yeah. To make electric cars cool.
Yeah, that one too.
And then to turn them into gas stations.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
those
saying?
shits looked like boxes at the beginning. They were the worst. No
terrible.
one to drive those things.
It had no power.
Yeah.
You might as well get out and run uphill.
Yeah, exactly. So I have just kind of a short answer section called the Encore. What's the worst part of your job that no one in their right mind would ever want to do?
Transcribing. The worst thing ever.
I've heard that from writers before.
It's the worst.
Yeah.
And the worst part is I don't like other people to transcribe for me because they get it wrong. One, two, it takes me away. When other people transcribe for me, it's harder for me to write the lead in or contextualize. So it's something I kind of have to do to get closer to the conversation, to get closer to the artist, to get where I need to be to provide insight. The worst. Same thing with editing. Like one of the new things I've been picking up or teaching myself is how to edit. Video editing, auto editing, Premiere, all these different programs sucks.
Yeah.
It takes forever to upload everything. It takes everything for all the files to move over. It takes up all the power, all your RAM on your computer. And I'm not dope. So I'm going through this whole process. I'm like figuring out how to get better at this other thing, this other mode of storytelling, because storytelling itself is the same thing as writing, and that's evolving so fast that, okay, here's a 20-minute conversation. I can edit that pretty good, but can I take that 20 minutes and turn it into an ill 45 seconds that gives you the whole bandwidth?
What made you feel like you needed to learn that editing system and Premiere and everything?
I got to be competitive. The whole world is changing, right? There's one thing that you talked to Soren Baker.
Right.
The people he talked to told him that, hey, man, you have to be the face of your brand. So he started his YouTube channel. He started doing a whole lot of stuff. I think we're the first people to put him on camera because he was hosting DX Dailies for a long time.
Right. Yeah.
So, you have to be able to do that as a writer. Otherwise, you're less competitive. Every publication, whether you're talking about MTV, New York Times, they're laying off writers. The last thing they need is just people who can write. Now, can you write but also host? Because if you can write and you can host, now you can come up with your own sketches, your own blocks, your own news things that you can do on your own, build your own reps, and take that over to Complex or wherever. But can you write, edit, and host?
Yes.
You just have more job security, quote unquote, and you also have the opportunity to create your own job at an efficient cost. Video's expensive, especially in Los Angeles. This place got more red cameras than any place else on the planet. How much money do you have to spend on video with where the advertising market is, where CPMs are?
Right.
How great is your sales team to get your product, to have an advertiser invest in your product? How engaged is your audience? How quickly can you turn around new product? For me, if I can keep everything in-house, I have a business background. I can talk to anybody about investment. I can write the content. I can host on camera. I've got reps doing it on radio, and I've got reps doing it on stage. If I can edit on my own and make it as fast as possible, then I'm able to not only control the product 100%, but I'm also able to do it at a low enough cost that whatever revenue comes in is adding to the profit margin as opposed to just breaking even.
Right.
And it puts me in a position to be more competitive regardless of what happens to the advertising market.
Yeah. That says it all right there. Is there one piece of equipment that you can't live without besides your phone or computer that you need on a day-to-day basis?
On a day-to-day basis? No.
Those are the two.
I need my phone. In terms of equipment, yeah.
You do
maybe
need,
my belt.
You need your camera, and now you need your
right.
Yeah,
I don't know, man. The iPhone cameras, the phone cameras are pretty good now.
Yeah.
Like, it was easier for me to get stuff at South by last week with my phone that was quality than it was to then it was worth it to lug my Mark IV around, because one, it's heavy as hell. Two, you're always worried about someone bumping into you. Three, you're worried about it getting stolen. And four, what really is it worth it? Like, you can set up an interview at a location and have them come to you.
Yeah.
Easy. But do you really need to get concert footage with this?
Yeah,
You might as well get your concert footage on your phone.
Right, which, I mean, you'll see a lot of that's posted from phones anyways.
It's faster.
Yeah.
If a viral moment happens, you already late.
Right. Yeah. And it doesn't matter that it's on a phone. You still get millions of hits on that if it's the right footage.
People like grimy sometimes.
That's true too. Yeah. There's something to that. All right, now that you're working the record business as well, if you had a $10,000 budget to release an album that was already mixed, mastered, and packaged, what would you spend it on?
To just release the album?
Yep. Yeah, it's already done. It's mixed, mastered, it's packaged. Now you got $10,000 to spend it to get the word out. What do you do?
I'd probably spend most of the money on I'd probably use the money and spread it out between. Wait, do I have visuals? I have to spend something
to pay
on,
for that.
I have to use something on
yeah.
visuals.
Right.
At least some version of visuals have to be created.
Right.
I'm not sure how dope they need to be, as I know they need to be wild interesting.
Yes.
And I would probably end up spending that money. We're just talking about pushing the album, right? We're not talking about shows and all that kind of stuff, right?
Yeah, right.
Then I'd take that and then I'd invest it in. I'd see. Here's what I would do. All right, I would take the actual stream. I'd wait for the album to come out. As the album came out, I would see what reacted on its own, right? No matter how many streams it is, you can kind of see what's reacting on its own.
Right.
I would take that and I'd create a visual around whatever the most reactive thing is, right? Then I would take whatever I could left over from that and I'd push, okay, here's $100 or $500 that's going towards pushing it on YouTube or Facebook. Here's $2,500 or $1,500 that's got to go to Baller Alert or Shade Room just to get in that mix. Mm-hmm. Then I would take a look at where the regions where these songs were most popular. And then I would take, let's say it was in nowhere, Idaho. Let's say it's somewhere in Wyoming, wherever that place is.
Right.
I would take whatever's left and I'd make another visual off whatever the second most reactive joint is off the project. And I'd make a visual off that song and dedicate it to that region. And then I have people in that region building a lot of interest, like, yo, nobody dedicates nothing to Kansas. Right. And then I would just go on tour in Kansas first and then go the Midwest and start taking a strange music model
Right.
while building a direct relationship with people who are near colleges. That's all they got. And, do that. And so I get at least one off the radar opportunity.
And I think also you make a good point. Besides regionalizing it, just the A/B testing of what's working, what's not working. I think a lot of people just take kind of like a blanket approach to marketing. Like, this is what I'm going to do, and I'm just going to spend all my money in all at once, instead of kind of staggering it and making sure you're spending it in the right place.
It's really up to your timeline, ultimately, right? If this project's already mixed and mastered and I'm putting it out on my own and I got $10,000, why do I need this project to move at a certain pace? I can control that as long as, I'm in a stable situation financially. Like, ultimately, if you take I've got videos I've made off articles I wrote 10 years ago. Not 10. Yeah, probably 10 years ago right now. And they get a second life because of a different presentation. Mm-hmm. People don't buy music anymore. They rent it. So you can rent a song forever.
Right.
That's why this is the greatest time in music, because if I'm a fan of the Beatles, maybe that's a bad example. If I'm a fan of Elvis, maybe that's a bad example. If I'm a fan of like Metallica, I can go listen to all Metallica songs right now. So Metallica gets a chance to make a little bit of money all the time. So Metallica, all they have to do is find ways to stay either in the news or in front of their audience.
Yeah.
And that's what I would need to do for my music. I can put the music out, just have no visuals at all, put it across every platform, and I can see something.
Yeah.
I can see what's moving already on its own. And then I could take that money and be like, okay, well, this is stuff people like the most, so let me make a visual around this.
Yeah.
And then now I can target. It depends on your timeline. People like to dominate the market because things that are new, overall, it's easier to consolidate interests.
Yeah.
But if you ask if I did it, I don't have an audience in music. My audience is consistent every week based off of the videos that I put out. So I could push an album or a song as long as possible.
Yeah.
And, that would be the approach that I take.
Well, I mean, and even the very first thing you said was make it wild interesting, right? So you don't need a huge budget to be interesting.
You don't.
And that's the thing that I think skips over so many people when you see the same videos of standing in front of cars or having two girls on your arms. Like, yeah, we've seen that a million times. You know, maybe that girl's a little hotter than the one in the other video. That car's a little nicer.
Right.
But is that really going to keep your attention as a viewer?
I can't think of what they're called, but you know how like you have those pictures that look like one thing to some people and they look like
yeah.
You could take a video and it just be like two ass cheeks, finest ass cheeks you ever seen on a chick, just awesome ass cheek with a little thong in it, and it's bouncing up and down, and all it does is move slowly farther away, farther away, farther away, farther away. It turns out it's just two hamburgers,
right?
Or it's two something else.
Yeah,
like it could be anything that still plays to our id. And ultimately ends up sparking our superego.
Right. That was great. That was deep. I like that. So now, knowing everything you know now, you feel like following your passion is good advice?
Yeah, I think that's the only thing that's going to be. I think that's the only truth that we all have individually. Like that's our truth.
Yeah.
I know what it is I love. I'm most passionate about what I want to do. I know what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah,
I know what society values. I know what'll make it easier for me to live, but that's not always the same thing as the things that I'm passionate about.
Yeah.
Like I loved investment banking. I only left because I wasn't as passionate about it as I was about writing about rap. So I could have stayed in investment banking, written about rap on the side, but I would have grown more frustrated because I was spending less time doing what I loved and more time, bare minimum, fractured, living two lives,
right?
Most likely growing more bitter or getting to the point where I couldn't imagine leaving investment banking at 35, 38 and being in New York City because I'd be tired.
Right. It's very different. Yeah.
My knees, they're not 28-year-old knees.
I was just there and the pace is so ridiculous. I forget, like, you have to walk like 10 miles an hour just to keep up so you're not getting knocked over. And
every
New
day.
York's a different. I mean, when you're young, it's great. It's the best place to live. But now L.A. suits me a little bit better.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always take money and just buy your way into stuff, but you end up wasting a lot of money.
Yeah.
Do I want to put on a rap show?
Yeah. Not really.
I don't know.
Yeah.
It depends on how much money I'm willing to lose.
Right. Yeah. What did your 21-year-old self do that you wouldn't be caught dead doing now?
What's my 21-year-old self doing that I wouldn't be caught dead doing now? I don't think there's anything my 21-year-old self did that I haven't done since even this year. You know, like 21-year-old self was like drinking a whole lot, just like kind of wilding sometimes. I don't know. Let me think. Wear turtlenecks.
Oh, that's
21-year-old self.
Wow.
I wouldn't wear a turtleneck now.
Did you get in a little turtleneck phase for a while there?
I did, man. I had ribbed turtlenecks from the Gap and Banana Republic. I had mock turtlenecks. I had visors. I'd wear like an Adidas visor and a turtleneck.
Did you ever wear it upside down, the visor? Did
Never.
you get that? Okay.
Thank God.
All right. That's
Thank
good.
God. That was a little too Malibu's Most Wanted for me.
Yeah. What did you think you couldn't live without but now realize wasn't so important in your life? Money. Yeah.
Money's going to come.
Yeah.
There's no point in my life, no matter how much money I was making, where there wasn't a point where I had money and then it went away. And there was no point where I didn't have money and then it showed up.
Right. Yeah.
I'm talking about since I was like 12, 10 years old, babysitting, 14 years old, working at McDonald's, 25 years old in investment banking, you know what I'm saying, now working in media. So that to me lets me know that if I'm doing the right things or things I'm most passionate about or moving with the most integrity, the most honesty, being most forthright, open, honest, and vulnerable, I'm going to be all right.
Yeah. Yeah. If an evil dictator took over the world and banned all art but allowed each person to keep one album and one book, what would you choose?
So that's like it's a very tough question. I tell you, if a 14-year-old me, it would have been East 1999 Eternal. A 24-year-old Justin, it would have been East 1990 Eternal. 32-year-old Justin, same album, Bone Thugs and Harmony, East 1999 Eternal. Now that album would be Kendrick Lamar's Damn. And
so you already think that's going to stand the test of time?
I'm an outlier on this. I think most people look at, To Pimp a Butterfly that way. Maybe they look at Section 80 or Good Kid, Mad City. His catalog is so close to flawless that I think you can make this argument with a lot of projects. But damn, man, that project it's like the Bible, right? It approaches different topics and challenges individually, love and lust and DNA and element. It's motivational. It's conceptual,
right? With
individual standout tracks that are incredible. The storytelling, the narratives around that are very interesting. You could play it forwards, you could play it backwards and take away different topics. Replay values off the charts. And when I listen to that album, I find myself thinking about tangible and esoteric challenges in my own life. And so the projects in my life that have gotten the closest to that, Lupe Fiasco's The Cool and Tetsuo and Youth, and Food and Liquor, for example, all fall into that conversation. Outkast, Speakerboxxx, Love Below falls into that conversation. Aquemini, Scarface, The Fix is in that conversation. Machiavelli, Tupac's in that conversation. A lot of projects fall into that. The Fugees, The Score falls into that conversation for me. A number of projects. Kanye West, pretty much his whole catalog falls into that conversation. So whenever I get those type of projects that make me think about not only the world I'm living in, but the life I've lived, and at this point, I've got enough reps where I can understand when something is deeper than right now. Like, that's one of the things that people talk about in music all the time. All the time people talk about in music. They talk about, well, it's got to stand the test of time. No, it doesn't. It didn't in 88.
Right.
Nobody in 88 was saying Paid in Full ain't a classic.
Yeah.
No one waited 5 years to say, you know what? Rakim did it on that Paid in Full.
Yeah.
Nobody said that.
Right.
Why you got to say that now? I get it. Now we're older. We got more reps. We're bougier.
There's
mistakes.
the 36 Chambers. There's Illmatic. There's Doggy Style that you could look back on and say those stood the test of time.
They stood the test of time.
Yeah.
And it's an individual conversation, right? Back then, they weren't calling Bone Thugs and Harmony East 99 a classic in the magazines.
Right.
But there's politics behind the magazines. I can't listen to them. I can listen to that. I knew that album was going to be a classic because nobody was sounding like them. Not that they were the fastest rappers. They're melodic. Not that they were the only people with melody, but the other people with melody weren't rapping about murder and marijuana. What are two of the most consistent themes in life? Murder and marijuana. So there's certain things that you can just understand. And for me, for albums that stand the test of time, you have to have hits.
Right.
But also has to be contextually revered. And for me, the reason why I separate Damn from those other projects that I talked about is that Kendrick found a way to harness individual pieces of all those artists. Kanye's art of crafting an album, Lupe's direction, wordplay, metaphor game, Andre 3000's nimbleness, voice delivery. All these different things are harnessed in him while he still finds a way to be himself and putting together a project that looked at individual emotions.
Right.
While still being a complete body of work.
And that goes back to studying the greats, but then developing your own style out of that.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. And so I would take that album.
Yeah.
If we're talking about books, this is so close. So close.
You got a couple? You can name a couple.
I got a couple. The Alchemist would be one.
Yeah, that's a great book.
Paulo Coelho.
Yeah.
And it's just the hero's journey.
Yeah.
I love it. He goes all the way across the world to find the gold, gets his ass kicked, and realizes, you know what, it was at home the whole time anyway.
Yeah.
That's amazing to me. Tribes by Seth Godin. I love Seth Godin's stuff.
Yeah.
That's a big one. The Game by Neil Strauss, the pickup artist book.
Yeah.
One of the best ever.
Yeah.
I love books
I
about...
never read it, but I know all about it. I know, it's kind of shaped a lot of people's mentalities. And then, they go in, I think, with a desire to build their self-confidence, right? And then I think as a lot of people, mature, then they're like, well, maybe it's not just about picking up girls. It's just more about developing as a better person and knowing how to communicate with people.
100%.
Yeah.
I like it because it's those things told from the perspective of a writer. Like he's a Rolling Stone writer.
Right.
He's a Billboard writer.
Yeah.
And so writing is an isolated thing. It's lonely. We spend a lot of time in our own head.
Yeah.
Typing on a computer, trying to make something that's going to capture a real life experience that we had so that when people are reading it, they feel something and they remember it.
Yeah.
He is the focus of that more than, to me, the pickup artist tips and tricks are. It's the way he describes the people he's around, the insecurities of the people who join that community, and the celebrities that he found himself engaging with at the same time. So I didn't really pick up any game from it as much as here's this guy who found himself through, this outlier community. But I think the ultimate book, the book that I would pick would be The 50th Law, 50 Cent's book. It came out in 2009, I want to say 2008. Like while the world was wallowing in the Great Recession and fear and doubt was captivating the globe, here comes 50 Cent at the, in my opinion, nascent stages of his ultimate evolution.
Yeah.
Offering a book on how to quell fears.
And had you already read the 48 Laws of Power when
No.
you read that?
Nope.
Okay.
I still haven't.
just went right into it.
I went to 50th Law.
Right.
I like rap.
Got it.
And 50 Cent was doing things that, from a business standpoint, I didn't think were possible.
Yeah.
And it's written by Robert Greene. And it also is from the same structure. So you have so many pieces of, the life of just people who conquered amazing things, like Alexander the Great. And their stories are littered in with 50 Cent's narrative at the same time. So you get, a conquering spirit or conversation from people throughout history who have achieved great things, and you got 50 Cent, you know? So that book was extremely impactful for me because I read that. That was probably the first book I read after I left the bank, or either that or right before it. And it was one of those last battery pack type information type, yeah, this is going to work.
Now I'm ready.
I don't know how, but it's going to work.
Yeah.
Because 50, it worked for 50. It's going to work for me.
Yeah.
You know, so I would definitely, so the album would be Kendrick Lamar's Damn, and the book would be 50th Law. Look at that. Dr. Dre Family Tree wins again.
Always.
Always.
If you could send a 280-character tweet that everyone in the world would see, what would it say?
A 280-character tweet?
That's what it is now, right?
It is.
Okay.
Is that, what, 4 sentences?
Yeah. Brief but impactful.
The sun is something eventually the planet's got to orbit. I always think about that. It's a Homeboy Sandman line. I think about that all the time because so often it feels like the ideas that we have or the things we want to accomplish other people don't believe in, or people shun you or tell you you're not good enough, or tell you that your videos are too long, or they tell you that, you know, you're just too short for the basketball team, you know, or so many times you're standing on an island, or you're on 6th Street in South by trying to tell the world how great your album is, and nobody's listening.
Yeah.
Nobody's paying attention. Everyone's telling you you're not good enough. And in those moments that I felt like that, I have to remind myself, the sun is something eventually the planet's got to orbit.
They've got to come around.
Everybody's going to come around.
Yeah.
Only thing I got to do is keep shining.
That's really dope. I love that a lot. Where can people find you online?
At The Company Man on everything, Twitter, Instagram. Please check out the YouTube channel. We look at life through the lens of hip-hop. So we'll talk about, you know, how we live in this world where sports team mentality has dominated everything from the music we like to our political choices. We don't necessarily care about our side winning as much as we'd rather see your side lose. And we'll compare that to a conversation with mathematics from Wu-Tang Clan, you know, or we'll look at how black rappers are going extinct, which is a layered conversation from Post Malone to the emergence of Asian hip-hop, multi-cultures galvanizing their own audiences, and how that looks in an environment with net neutrality, where people don't have the same opportunity and are now being taxed, told, tariffed away from reaching the broadest audience as possible.
Yeah.
Is it possible that, you know, hip-hop starts to look a lot like rock and roll?
It's very possible.
So we'll tackle topics like this. Is Drake black excellence? I always thought he was, but he's Canadian. And on diplomatic immunity, he questioned it. And then right after we made that video, he gave away $1 million in God's Plan video.
Interesting.
You know, so these are the kind of conversations we have.
So you're out there changing the world. You're getting people to give $1 million.
Look, man, the coolest thing about hip hop to me is that it was, you know, at its core and at its beginning, it was a way to bring a community together.
Yeah.
And I think that all of us have the opportunity to do that individually because we are all our own scorecards.
Yeah.
Right. And I do think there's an opportunity to go from community to constituency, where we're able to not only inspire people and party together, but also forward the lives of us, each of us individually, the tenets of our society.
Yeah.
You know, ways to make the world better or make an individual life better. If we're not making the truest thing that's been most consistent in my life is every time I was in a position to make someone else's life better, and every time I did that, my life became better.
Yeah.
So that's what we try to do at the on the Company Man YouTube channel.
Yeah, that's amazing. That's a perfect place to leave it. Justin Hunte, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Man, Eric, I appreciate you
so
bro.
much.
Definitely, man.
All right.
This is great.
Thanks again, everybody, for tuning in. Check out more episodes at focusnoise.com. Like us on the Facebook application, facebook.com/The Indie Playbook. Until next time, keep pushing, y'all.